First of all, I would love to thank all of you for being here, including the media and our speakers and the guests who are here to support. This is a very, very important issue for us. And I could really relate to them only for the past 12 years, since 9/11. African Americans, brothers and sisters, have been facing this discrimination, inequality, injustice for hundreds of years. I really cannot understand how they have survived this long. They need our support, and that's why it is crucial for every community to stand with each other. And for the past 10 years, that's what I have been dedicated my life for. Nothing would change if only blacks would speak for blacks and Latino for Latino and Muslims for Muslims and Asian Americans for them. Until and unless all of us would speak on each other's behalf and stand in solidarity, our country would be going down the hill and nothing ever would change for anybody. So my urgent request to all of my Americans is, please stand with each other. Please support each other. Please make a point of getting to know your neighbors, all of your fellow Americans, because we need to restore our country's values and our country's respect and dignity in the world. And by doing these kind of things, we are not doing it, any of it. So this is why American Muslim Voice took the time to do that. One of the media person that I'm close to, I called and found out, this is the first time I'm not getting the response that I usually get from the media, what's going on. And she said, can I be blunt with you? And I said, sure. She said, yes, you're talking about, against Zimmerman's verdict. I said, yes. She said, it was a week ago, who cares now? A week ago and who cares now is just something horrible to me. That is why nothing is changing, because we just listen to the headlines for one day and then we move on to the next thing. Have we fixed peace? Have we fixed inequality? Have we fixed injustices? Why can we just move on so quickly? Why is life as usual? That is a great tragedy. And why I can relate just a tiny bit with my African American families. After 9/11, at the time my son was 20 years old. And I remember feeling the terror when I learned that, Muslim young youth, young men, young adults are picked up on the highways and the streets without telling them anything. I begged my son to please, if a policeman stops you, stop there and listen to them whatever they're asking you to do. And he said, no, I'm not going to do that if I'm not guilty of anything. And I started crying and I said, please, for my sake, do it. Even if they ask you to lie down on the floor, you had nothing wrong, you have done nothing wrong, do that. Because the climate is people will kill you first and ask you questions later. This is what our African brothers and sisters have been feeling for hundreds of years. I am not going to do that. Life as usual. I cannot pretend, and I'm urging all of you not to pretend life is fine. So that's why I gathered all of you here, and again, I want to thank you for being here. And I will just let some of my wonderful, esteemed colleagues who have been here, we had 2 days to organize this, so I want to thank them specially for being here. Our first speaker would be Reverend Jeff Moore, President of the San Jose Silicon Valley NAACP. Please welcome Jeff.
I'm just returning from Florida, and so this has been a very hard time for me as a person of color, a person who reigns and comes from the South, who knows the ways of the South all too well from a little boy and from my ancestors and from my mother and from her mothers. It's different, but it's not different. There's a song or a poem that comes to mind that's written that says, Southern trees bear strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root. black bodies swinging in the southern breeze, strange fruit hanging from poplar trees. Pastoral scene of the giant south, the bulging eyes and the twisted mouth. Scent of magnolia, sweet and fresh, the sudden smell of burning flesh. That is the South I have known, and to this day still know. When the verdict came down, I was just 30 miles away from where it happened. We were asked to hold our water. To this day, it's still hard to hold that water, to feel the hurt, to feel the uncertainties, to know that I have 2 sons who everyone says are nice, cute boys, but in 10 years, someone will look at them as a threat merely for the color of their skin. The crime was a crime of not self-defense, but of ignorance and negligence. Ignorance was what caused George Simonson to pursue an innocent man because he looked a certain way. The economic violence committed by the status quo against the poor and minorities is engineered inequality. America's vast inequality didn't just happen, it's been politically engineered and set this way. This is something that my brothers who were Muslims since 9/11 have felt. This is my brothers who are Latino who have felt. Been the cars have been pulled over or stopped, or just walked into a local store and been followed for no apparent reason. Judged that because you've come into the store that you're going to do some harm and not there to do something good. It was Coretta Scott King that said, also when I got back, I first was told that there was a shooting of an 8-year-old girl in Oakland. And it was Coretta Scott King that came to mind. She said, poverty can produce the most deadly kind of violence. In this society, violence against poor people and minority groups is routine. I'm reminding you that the starving child is violence. Suppressing the culture is violence. Neglecting school children is violence. Discrimination against a working man is violence. Ghetto house is violence. Ignoring medical needs is violence. Contempt for equality is violence. Even a lack of willpower to help humanity is all violence. And violence is the problem in America. Inequity of wealth and not fair treatment of everyone is violence in America today, not just gun violence. We must stand against all these forms of inequality. Benjamin May said of only just a minute, only 60 seconds in it, forced upon me, can't refuse it, didn't seek it, didn't choose it, but it's up to me to use it. I must suffer it if I lose it, give account if I abuse it. Just a tiny little minute, but eternity is in it. We all have a minute to change what's going on. The San Jose Silicon Valley NAACP believes that this country should look at this act of ignorance as a launching point for the national dialogue on the dispersal of stereotypes that pervade our society. Stereotypes that make young, black and brown, or a person wearing a turban a threat to someone in this country because they don't look the same. This national epidemic of racial profiling will not just be for the fallen Trayon Martin, but for all the people of black and brown or Muslims or anybody that has fit this profile have been stopped here in Santa Clara County. Just this past June, right on here in Scotts Valley, Santa Clara Police Department pulled over somebody who fit the description, roughed them up, handcuffed them, and then found out they weren't the criminal, just let them go and never said they were sorry. I call on the county to pass a memorandum or a resolution that would say anytime a police officer pulls over anybody for any wrong motive, that they immediately apologize and some type of form of restitution come from the county or city in a form of an apology or an explanation of what happened so that their children will understand. In conclusion, I'd like to reference the case of Marissa Alexander, a woman who was denied the stand your ground ruling by the same prosecutor who tried Zimmerman. She was sentenced to 20 years in prison for simply firing a warning shot. Here, a young man simply walking home. When we asked them, if someone, I just want you to take this analogy, you've been walking for a while, or as we have noticed in 1955, I believe it was, when Tillman was walking in Mississippi, Money, Mississippi. He just went to get some candy, stopped by the store, and they said he whistled at a white girl, and for that reason, he was lynched. And they would have probably said, stand your ground, count it. Or when we bring it to 2013, and we see Martin walking, and the same thing repeats itself, just a state away. These same states are the same place where they have taken our keys from. We must understand that the fact that right after they pulled away Section 4 of our voting rights is the same state. They took away the key. They've left Section 5. They've left the automobile, but they've taken away the keys that judge the automobile on these states that do these wrong things. California needs to make its own voting rights or whatever we need to do to force change in America. America has a problem to some. And that problem is all the states south of the Mason-Dixon line are really becoming countries or states of people of color. And part of it in Texas and the Midwest, there's a lot of Latinos moving in. In the South, it's a large percentage of African Americans. There's a grab to keep people who do not look what they would say the norm of America is. But the American norm is changing. The American norm is becoming people of color, and all of us are people of color. Let us all gather around and join hands as brothers and sisters. And as I say, be planted like a river but stream. And say we'll not be moved. We will no longer tolerate this mistreatment of any people in this country. Everyone in this country should have a right to be in this country, to walk the streets in this country, to go to the stores in this country, and not be threatened or feel under a threat from anybody to do them harm. To my Muslim brothers and sisters, I said, I am here. I am here for you, and I am here with you. If ever there's a cause for me to come, as a matter of fact, I ask you to join us. I'm on most of your mailing lists. I get your stuff in the mail, and I'm always watching. If I hear something's going on, I want to be one of the first ones that run there to be there to support you. Even though I may not culturally sometime understand it, or culturally get it, I am here. When you say someone has done you wrong, I'm coming. I'm going to find out what they've done, and I'm going to find out how we can change it. But that's what America is to me. I just want to tell you, when I look at my personal life, if you look at my family, here in California, part of my family, I have Vietnamese members in my family. I have Latinos in my family. I have white people in my family. I have Italians, I have some Samoans, and all these have my blood running through them in some form or fashion. I am the American dream. America needs to get over what it is and see that we are a dream of people of mixed ethnicities, and we're all one, gathered one, under one God, one nation, understanding liberty and justice for all with the right to worship where we want to worship and how we want to worship. That is the creed of this country. Thank you very much.
I received a lot of emails after the verdict. One thing that really had stayed with me, somebody said with the subject line, "Don't forget to turn back your clocks." And I'm thinking before I opened up that email, we are not in the time change zone. What is this all about? And when I opened it, it said, "Don't forget to change your clocks back 50 years. We are back 50 years, slipping and sliding fast. So keep that in mind. Our next speaker is a very dear friend. Actually, she's much younger, so I could call her my daughter. Zahra Billo, Executive Director of CARE, San Jose, San Francisco Bay Area Chapter. Welcome, Zahra.
Good morning. I echo Reverend Moore's birthday greetings to Samina, and I think that she chose to celebrate her birthday in this unique way as a reminder to all of us about how we can incorporate activism into our daily lives and make that a part of just the fabric of our being. I also agree that it is troubling that a week later some may not find this conversation interesting. At CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, we welcome the Department of Justice's review of the Zimmerman verdict. We know that Trayon Martin's civil rights were violated. We hope that the federal government will agree. And at the same time, we choose to be pragmatic about who we seek help from, recognizing that the federal government is frequently the very structure that it impacts and perpetuates violence against people of color. We don't forget that Trayon Martin is yet one of many, many cases. People who are shot, harassed, roughed up by law enforcement. Innocent men and women who are sitting in our state and federal prisons. People abroad who are being killed without due process. And so while we welcome this review, we remain somber because Trayon Martin's murder and Zimmerman's verdict remind us that there is yet a lot of work to be done. We renew our urge for the Senate to endorse the End Racial Profiling Act, which would make racial profiling illegal when done by law enforcement, local, federal, state, and tribal. And we stand with our brothers and sisters in the African American community, recognizing that each of our communities alone cannot overcome racial injustice and violence against our communities, but that together we can make a difference. We're cognizant and welcoming of the fact that people are speaking out against this case and against many cases of violence against young men and women of color. And so I urge all of you to take what you hear at this press conference today and translate it into action, whether it's another press conference in your community or conversations about how racial justice impacts racial justice and injustice as it manifests today, impacts all of us. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Zenda. Our next speaker is somebody I highly respect, and I call him Grandpa of Interfaith, Reverend Dr. Andrew Kelly, President of Silicon Valley Interreligious Council, and I am also a board member for that.
Good morning. Good morning. And happy birthday. We appreciate Samina calling this group together because there are times when we need to see one another and talk with one another and be with one another. The verdict in the Florida trial of George Zimmerman for his shooting Trayon Martin to death has aroused responses of all kinds. It is sadly a familiar scenario, and it has rubbed us raw yet again in those aching and sore spots of our nation, evoking familiar responses and threatening to reinforce long-time prejudices and to underscore long-held prejudices. The responses across this country remind us once again of our shameful history of hatred and discrimination, of privilege and power based on differences of race, religion, and culture. It lifts up again the issues of the desperate need to find ways to control gun violence. And sadly, much of the current discussion in our national and social media is not so much a conversation as it is a taking sides, yelling and arguing at one another, so convinced of the correctness of our own perspective that at best we are unwilling to listen to the other, and at worst, we are willing to act out violently against one another. And so the cycle continues yet another round. Taking sides, arguing points, pressing agendas. Civic is not here today to question the details of the legal system or the disposition of the Trayon Martin case. What happens in the courts often does not have as much real impact on our lives, on our nation, our communities, our neighbors, and ourselves, as does the way that we choose to live together and deal with one another. We find ourselves, in the words of so many, sad and mad and heartbroken. The Silicon Valley Interreligious Council is a coalition of interfaith groups working together to build a more just and compassionate society. And we are glad to work with groups like American Muslim Voice that seek to improve the way that we deal with one another and the benefits of acceptance and understanding. The issues raised in this case are complex, and they require many responses on multiple levels. But above all, they require each of us to learn how to talk with one another, to cross over those deeply inscribed barriers of prejudice and hostility, and to discover together how we may move together as one people. We need to discover the richness that comes of our diversity, to create shared spaces and peaceful spaces, rather than building bigger walls and gated communities and carrying bigger guns. The United Religions Initiative recently began a program, Talking Back to Hate, in which people are invited to take this pledge. I pledge to be a voice for respect and acceptance and to take actions with others in my school, workplace, home, community, or place of worship to create a more safe, accepting, and inclusive environment. I commit to pay attention to my speech on a daily basis and reflect on how my thoughts and words affect my actions and interactions with others. So take the pledge. Meet your neighbors. Listen to them. Understand the sadness and the anger and the heartbreak, and learn from them. As Martin Luther King Jr. once said, we must learn to live together as brothers and sisters, or we will perish together as fools. And so together we work for that time when all of us are free to walk down a street without fear, whether we be wearing a hoodie or a hijab, a turban or a turtleneck, whether we be black, white, or brown, all part of one community and one people. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Since I don't want to be a fool, I have some flyers here on the table. You are all invited to my home this Sunday for iftar dinner. That's one of the ongoing campaign of American Muslim Voice, bringing people together and sharing our culture and religion. Our next speaker would be Office Manager, Office of Human Relations, Delorme, a dear friend of mine. And I ask everyone to please keep your comments brief because there is going to be Friday prayer here very soon. And they're being very, very quiet setting up their set. So.
Happy birthday, Samina. The Office of Human Relations is all about building human relations. We've been doing this work for over 42 years, trying to introduce each other, people to each other, giving them the opportunity to ask really difficult questions. But this last weekend, it became deeply, deeply personal for me. I'm the mother of an African-American son. I never imagined when I gave birth to my son that when he turned 9 years of age, all of a sudden I would be dealing with racism directed at my son. It has been escalating over the years, and my son has never committed a crime. This weekend when the verdict came down, my heart broke. I vibrated for a while. I just didn't expect it. And since I've been traveling throughout this particular community since this happened, I've discovered so many hearts have broken. And it doesn't matter what the color of their skin has been. So many mothers are weeping for their boys, concerned about what could possibly happen when they leave their home. This is not a mother's dream. This is a mother's nightmare. I ask you as a mother, I ask this community and this nation, as someone who believes strongly in peace and justice and positive intergroup relations, I ask us to think about empathy. Step into someone else's shoes. Remember that you're just like them. Feel something for other people. Don't just think about who they are. Feel something. Feel that they are a human being, just like you. It will help all of us to make a difference. Thank you for inviting me to this event this day. It's really important that we continue to do this work. This movement is building, not only in this community, but around the nation. Please take the opportunity to join the movement, to be active, because we all need each other. Thank you.
Yes, our next speaker could not be here. Congressman Michael Honda is in Washington, D.C., so he has sent his representative, Anam. Anam, I don't know your last name.
Assalamu alaikum, good morning. My name is Anam Hassan. On behalf of Congressman Mike Honda, I would like to read the statement he has prepared for this conference. To this day, my heart and condolences go out to Trayon Martin's family. The Martin family suffered the unnecessary tragedy of losing their son, but rest assured, Trayon's story will not end here. His tragedy and the injustice he suffered has shaken every community in America. I hope that his story has made clear that we must be vigilant about making sure our systems of government uphold and protect our civil rights and justice. That is why I urge the Department of Justice to investigate filing civil rights charges, because young black men should not have to be forced to interact with a hostile and discriminatory environment each and every day. Today I applaud my colleague, Senator Dick Durbin, for setting a hearing on the horrific Stand Your Ground laws. The tragedy that befell Trayon speaks clearly to our nation's need for sensible gun safety legislation as a bold step towards preserving each and every American's safety. Trayon's story also highlights the need for us as a nation to begin a purposeful conversation about ending discrimination and fostering tolerance, not just for people of different ethnicities, but of different religions as well. Trayon's tragedy brings me back to when I first called on Congress in 2001 to condemn bigotry and violence against Sikh Americans in the wake of September 11. Trayon's tragedy reminds me that the fight is not over, even today, which is why I organize an effort just this week with other members of Congress to call on the President to convene a summit to address violence against religious minorities throughout the country. Trayon's tragedy must teach us the importance of working together as a community, as a people, to move towards a brighter future where there will be no need for these types of actions. And most importantly, it must teach us about the importance of constantly forging pathways to a more perfect union. Trayon's story must be the one that ends with an America that is inclusive, diverse, and united. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Brother Rashid Salam, Deputy Director of Be a Champion Foundation. And after this, we will have only one more speaker, so I ask all the speakers to come here and all the people who are here to support, so we can have one group for.
Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God, most gracious and most merciful benefactor, I'd like to take this opportunity, number one, and wish you a happy anniversary. When we get this age, we don't have birthdays anymore, we have anniversaries. 47 years ago, our forefathers brought forth to this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. This is the time, this is the country that we live in with that creed, that preamble. But we live in a system that most of us understand and refer to as racism. When I heard the verdict, which I had told everyone that I knew what was going to happen based on what I always have known, what we know as African American people, that they never see our side of the story. Especially when you don't have the people involved who think like us, understand us, and appreciate us for our ideology and our philosophy. This system is why we're here today. The Quran teaches us that speak not of my servant as being dead. He lives. We just don't understand. Now that gives me an analogy of what death is all about. There's always good and bad in everything. I look at Trayon's death as being an opportunity instead of a tragedy. We don't understand death. We don't know why God do what he does. But I know one thing. He takes life and he gives life. And it's hard for us to understand that nothing comes into this world without his will, and nothing leaves this world without his will. I've known people who get shot in the head and got shot 4 or 5 times, they didn't die. But this time, this death made me remember a scripture, or not scripture, a concept in Congress in 1832 by Henry Bibby, a congressman. He stated that we have thereby eliminated almost every opportunity that knowledge can enter the slave's mind. If we can exhaust that, we will be safe and they will be like beasts of the field. That knowledge that they was trying to eliminate was the soul of the human being that only God has control over. So this death to me brings us to the state that Trayon lives in each and every one of us. He could have lived 50 lifetimes and nobody would ever known his name. But now that we know that he has affected the whole world, this justice, this freedom, this equality that we're all seeking and searching for, let us take Trayon's spirit, which is still here with all of us today. Let us honor this spirit, come together in unity, work on changing the laws of this country, because that's basically what has to be done. That is not our Constitution, that is not our preamble, that is not our creed. So I'd like to just say that and thank all of those who've come out today. And I appreciate Sister Mina for what she's done. And I hope that we understand the roles that we all have to play, each and every one of us. And I'd like to make a proclamation to all of you today. The Be a Champion Foundation is starting a program which we've already started in Alameda County called Save Our Sons. What an opportunity for all of our young men of different nationalities and religions and creeds to come together and talk about what we need to do. And we as parents need to know what do we need to do to save our sons. Thank you very much.
So our next speaker is Abdus Sattar Ghazali, and then we have an extra speaker walked in, Reshma Inamdar.
Assalamu alaikum and happy birthday to you, Samina. Well, AMV believes that George Zimmerman targeted Trayon Martin because he was a black guy. Unfortunately, as Muslims, we have been the recipient of the same kind of treatment since 9/11. The acquittal of Zimmerman is a miscarriage of justice. As ACLU Executive Director Anthony Romano said, this verdict caused serious doubts on whether our legal system provides equal protection of law to everyone regardless of race and ethnicity. Thank you.
Reshma Inamdar, an activist for domestic violence.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. I'm Reshma Inamdar. I'm speaking on behalf of SAMA Inc., which is a domestic violence prevention organization. SAMA Inc. Is horrified at the egregious misapplication of law in Florida, which allowed George Zimmerman to go free after killing unarmed 17-year-old Trayon Martin, but has sentenced Marissa Alexander of Jacksonville to 20 years in prison for defending herself. Marissa Alexander, a black woman, has stated that she fired shots in the air to scare off her abusive husband. She fired in self-defense, harmed no one, and yet she faces 20 years behind bars while George Zimmerman is fully acquitted. We urge Florida Governor Rick Scott and Florida legislature to immediately redress this clear travesty of justice. No one can bring back Trayon Martin, but we can hopefully work to ensure that Marissa Alexander will not suffer further for having been born a black woman trying to defend herself. And perhaps also address the issue of racial profiling in general, so that justice is applied equally to all. Thank you.
So in conclusion, I think I would like all of us to think about it. What if Zimmerman was black? What if Martin was white? Would the verdict be the same? I can guarantee you 100% it wouldn't be. If Zimmerman was black, he wouldn't be walking the street for 6 weeks right after killing an innocent young man. So please, ponder, think, take action, support each other, and go with this thought that we must do something to create a better life for everyone. And a lot of the time, American Muslim Voice, when we go out to foundations for grants, we don't get grants. Reason you might laugh about it, they say you are trying to do too much. And I have always told them, tell me something, which issue that I'm dealing with is not a human issue. I'm just dealing with human beings. Wherever they need me, I'll be there. Money or no money, I have to do what I am called to do by my Creator. So, thank you for wishes, but I don't think I have done anything what is extraordinary. I'm just doing what God called me to do. I think He made me to do this work. And I'm thankful that He chose me to do this wonderful work. Please come to our house. And now if everybody could come on the stage, we could do a very quick, really, because I'm looking at you, it is such a diverse group. And I want to send a photo of this, that we can build friendships. That's what we exist for. That's what American Muslim Voice is there for, to really foster friendships among all Americans, one person at a time. Yes, it would take time, and that's what I'm told, that you are dreaming too big, trying to do too much, and I have always shared, and I'll share this again. I am from a culture where we believe when we plant a mango tree, we know we are not going to eat mangoes from that tree. Nonetheless, we plant many of them for our next generations. The work we would do today in our lives, we may not see the results for that, and I'm okay with that. But it would definitely start to sow some seeds of friendship, peace, equality, justice, fairness. I have actually written a small prayer. I don't remember the whole thing, but I pray every night before I go to sleep. Dear God, grants us the hearts that could feel the pain of others. So just remember that. I hope all of my fellow human beings feel the pain of others, because then we would do something about it. Thank you so very much, and please join me on the stage. Yeah, that's one thing, short people in the front. Are you short or tall?
No, I think I'm medium.
Medium? Okay, let's go. Come on closer. Let's pretend we like each other just for today.
Just today.
Just today. Madani said, maybe you can give your camera to somebody and get in the photo.
Okay.
Come closer, please. There is lots of room. Okay, let's do the sideways, like in the high school. Come on, Zara, you can come in.
Okay, sorry.
I don't think we're all coming. Let's do
No,
something different.
everybody's coming.
Right, here, come on, let's sit here.
Everybody.
Come on, this would be better. Come on.
I feel like we can't fight for
Come on. Yes, it's my birthday. Yeah, come on, please. Varda, you need to come in the photo too. Okay. Somebody. Closer. All right. Yeah.
Sure.
All right.
I guess.
Varda, you need to be in the photo. Radari, you need to be in the photo. Varda.
Squeeze in real tight
Okay, let's squeeze it.
to get everybody. You ready? I'm not getting you on the end.
All right.
Did you stick? Oh, there you go. That'll work. That'll work. Okay, everyone's in. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I'll take another. 1, 2, 3.
All right. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.